This is not a straight line evolution to say that just because you have an aging population or fewer birth rates, your economy won't necessarily suffer. Well, extinction is an interesting Darwinian concept, but hopefully it doesn't apply to Singapore.
Hi, Ms. Selena. Thank you for joining us on an edition of 5 Questions With. Could you please introduce yourself for us?
Sure, I'm Selena Ling, Chief Economist and Head of Global Markets Research and Strategy for OCBC.
Elon Musk recently said, Singapore is going extinct. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that sounds a little bit extreme. I don't think we'll go extinct in the near future. It is true that our fertility rate is a bit low. Below 1 is basically below replacement rate. That said, of course, it's a global phenomenon. People are delaying marriage, they are delaying childbirth, they're having lesser kids, and some people are choosing not to get married at all. So lifestyles have changed, societal expectations have also changed. The impact of falling fertility rate, of course, means that your population will continue to age, and of course your young Singaporeans are going to be far and fewer in between. So this will actually have some economic impact on the Singapore economy. Singaporeans are going to be facing a crunch in terms of are there high-paying, well-skilled jobs that are sufficient to go around, and that also means that possibly you will need to supplement with either technology or also through immigration. So it's a bit of potentially either a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle. It's not a doomsday scenario by any means. Like I mentioned earlier, just because you have an aging population or fewer birth rates, your economy won't necessarily suffer.
Mm-hmm. With a shrinking workforce comes the issue of declining productivity. Are current measures sufficient, or where else can Singapore look to raise its productivity?
Well, when it comes to productivity, obviously, it's a bit like trying to get people to upskill so that they are more effective in their jobs, or they can be moving up the value chain to do higher requirement jobs, and in turn they can receive higher pay, and of course with the income growth then they can spend more. So it is a virtuous cycle in that sense. So the Skills Future is really a program to nudge people to consider upgrading their skills even when they have jobs. No job remains evergreen forever, and even after graduating from a higher learning institute, for instance, with time and with technological changes, your skill sets can actually become obsolete. So it's kind of like anticipation and preparation for future jobs and future industries that will come. So in that sense, I think Skills Future is a good step. It really puts money in the hands of the individual, so that kind of empowers them to actually embark on certain learning programs that they may be interested in, or they think that could be a second mountain for them, for instance. As far as productivity is concerned, there have been quite a few incentive schemes in the past, basically to help like SMEs, for instance, go digital, and to basically help them to think about internationalization. SMEs typically have less resources, and they may have less bandwidth to think about how to do some of these things. So giving them easy access to some of these tools, I think would be very useful.
I wanted to ask you about the 4-day work week. Studies have shown that it can increase productivity in workers, but it can also give young couples the extra time to care for and grow their families. What's your take? And do you think Singapore is ready for it?
Well, it's a bit of a trade-off, I would say. It's not just the economic benefits of it, but really, in terms of for your society, we know that after the pandemic, there is a lot of focus on work-life balance and also mental wellness. So I suppose, a shorter work week would be welcome in some segments, especially from the workers' point of view. For businesses, for them, they may see it slightly differently, mainly because of the cost component and the fact that they may need to have a little bit more buffer on the manpower side to cover. So imagine if you're in retail or you're running an F&B. So even if you go from a 5-day to 4-day work week, it just means that you need to have more shifts. But I think at the end of the day, the key or the litmus test really is whether workers are more productive, right? So if you can get more work done in a shorter period of time, then that would be a productivity improvement, and that should be actually very welcome by the employers.
The nation is also grappling with an aging population. By 2030, 1 in 4 Singaporeans will be over the age of 65. Are measures related to increasing the retirement age and the re-employment age helpful?
It serves a few purposes. One, of course, is that it keeps workers in the workforce longer. So that kind of helps to take the edge off, the manpower constraint that we have. And the other thing really is also trying to prepare, Singaporeans with longer longevity. They may also need to have higher retirement savings, for instance. So keeping them economically active may be beneficial from both an economic but also from a societal perspective. I think they are a good signaling device in the sense that it tells companies and employers, hey, don't write off someone just because they have reached a certain age. Because these days, job requirements are different, They always say the 70s are the new 50s, right? Or 60s are the new 40s, right? More senior workers have a lot to offer, right? They are wiser, they have a lot more experience. And in fact, I think when you have interactions between young and more senior workers, it's a two-way teaching process, right? The young can teach the more senior workers about the digital economy, about programming, coding, social media, etc. And then similarly for the more senior workers, there's a lot of the knowledge and experience that they can impart to the younger workers. So I see it as actually a mutually beneficial process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad always says I'm reverse mentoring him.
Precisely, right? These days, age shouldn't be a constraint in a workplace or in terms of mentoring.
Mm-hmm. We've seen that an increase in minimum salary requirements for S-Pass and employment pass holders has resulted in a drop in the number of applications. What does this policy change mean for companies that used to rely on foreign talent, and how will this impact Singapore's productivity and our growth?
Singapore has always been relatively careful in terms of how it calibrates its foreign manpower policy. So of course it recognizes that for firms here, for them to expand and grow, they do need a manpower. But it's a chicken and egg problem mainly because if you are in a certain industry and you're very used to having affordable foreign workers, then there is less pressure on you to basically upgrade and move up the value chain, or to automate, or to invest in technology or equipment, or train your workers, etc. It's basically like walking on a tightrope. You do want to allow for foreign workers to come in, but you have to be a little bit nuanced in terms of like the skill sets that you allow in, even the numbers that you allow in, because it kind of affects the social balance in the society as well, right? So there are all these different considerations apart from economics to consider from the policymakers' perspective. It's not to say they are completely unwelcoming of foreign labour. In fact, I took a look at the foreign labour in our Singapore society over time, and actually they have been remarkably stable.
So this issue of declining birth rate, as you mentioned, is not specific to Singapore, right? A 2024 study found that 3 in 4 countries could be below the fertility replacement rate by 2050. Does this mean we'll see a global shift in the way that we work?
I think the shift has been happening over time and probably got accelerated by a few events like pandemic, right? And now, of course, with the onset of AI and Gen AI and quantum computing, we can expect that technology will really grow by leaps and bounds from here, right? Now with AI, actually a lot of the junior, baseline research work, for instance, it can be done fairly quickly, on the keyboard without having a lot of humans to run around to gather kind of information, right? That's good and bad. I mean, it can be a double-edged sword in that sense. But I think as far as enhancing productivity, it should be a plus. And I think in time to come, probably more segments of workers and society will embrace some of this technology. And hopefully that would actually, provide the productivity boost that probably in the past used to come from higher fertility rates and having more workers. But today it's all about doing more with less.
So do you think there's a chance for a turnaround?
I think it will be very challenging. This is a global phenomenon. I mean, you look at more mature societies, Japan for instance. Once the economy matures and the society matures, it seems to be a one-way street. So a lot of the policies, what they're trying to do is not so much trying to reverse the trend per se. They're trying to slow down the pace of the decline. Whether it's in terms of fertility rates or in terms of exits from the workforce, delaying your retirement age, for instance, making people feel gainfully employed or being active in the economy and society. I think generally these are moves in the right trend.
Thank you so much, Ms. Selena, for joining us today. We really appreciate hearing your insights.
Thank you.